And greetings. Let's see if we can start this over with. Got about halfway through this video and start getting phone calls. So, going to talk about the Great Loop here and what my plans are, what I'm looking at, like I've said in my other videos, and I'll start talking about that here shortly, is after harvest of 2021, so we're talking October, is when I'm going to be looking at starting up getting things really in motion for my Great Loop. I'm looking at boats down around Florida, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, primarily looking at those beginning in October, November, so I have time to do maintenance on those boats prior to my trip. So if I have extra time, because the boat's in a lot better shape, I'll go down to the Caribbean or Bahamas. I'll do extra sightseeing down there during that time period. Generally, you start off going north of, let's say, South Carolina, Georgia in the spring. You're traveling up the East Coast during the spring into summer as you're going across the Great Lakes, and you're starting to come back down in the fall. So you're back down into the Gulf of Mexico area, down in this area in the winter, so you can stay in nice warm climates. So here are the power boats I'm contemplating the types of for this. You have a lot more options when it comes to power boats to do this trip on. You really need to budget yourself and take into consideration how much money you have for fuel on this trip, because some of these boats you could probably do the trip on $10,000 in fuel or a little bit more, but a lot of boats out there, you're going to go through 10,000 and you're not even going to be halfway through. Research your boats, and by that I mean things like I didn't pull one up. You've got some of these boats that are not the most efficient boats out there. Going to look at this one here. It's a 40-foot 1983, well below my $40,000 to $60,000 I'm looking at for a boat. It's run 6 to 10 knots. You're generally going to want a slower moving boat, because if you're getting a planing boat, you're going to be burning a lot more fuel on your trip. You'll also generally have less when it comes to amenities. This one has 400 gallons, so back in this section here where you need to go roughly 200 and something, a little over 300 miles to get your next fuel stop, you have plenty. 400 gallons on a boat that realistically sips fuel, you'll be fine. You're cruising at this at 6 knots, 7 knots, you're probably burning a little over 2 gallons of fuel an hour. So it's not going to be that bad. This boat's a Ford Lehman. About half of its life's been used. About 10,000 hours from what I've seen is about when these motors need to get rebuilt if they've been maintained well. Good boat from everything I can see here. You've got 2 cabins, 2 heads. Chances are inside you've got a dinette or something that can be changed into a berth if you need the extra room. It's a rear stateroom, V berth, and it doesn't show the settee dining room area, and that's probably where your other accommodation is. So realistically not a big issue. Well within the price range I was looking at, well below the draft, maximum draft I'd be looking at. It's a very doable boat, and I would do this boat on the trip if it's still on the market in close to a year. Uh, but some of these other boats, you could be spending a lot more on fuel. This boat right here on this trawler cat, you might be ending up paying more because it's a catamaran with a 16-foot wide beam when you dock. Can't tell you for sure. I do know that some places do charge extra for wide boats. See that a lot with sailing catamarans. They pay more if you're going into marinas with them. Let's pull up some more statistics on this. Now, some people with catamarans, I'm not sure how well it works with the powered cats, but with like your sailing cats, especially with dagger boards, they'll only run one of their motors and have a dagger board down, and it keeps them pretty much trimmed up running straight down, and they're burning a lot less fuel. Where that one motor, they're only losing about a knot of speed, knot and a half, tops of 2 knots. So let's say the boat will, with both motors going full power, they might do 7, and by running one, they might go down to 5.5 or so. So they could save a lot of fuel and other things. It greatly increases their mileage, their range on it. This thing goes at about, cruises at 8 knots, can travel up to 18. Draft is 3 foot 6 inches. Its max bridge clearance is 16 feet 5 inches, so it will fit under that bridge. This does not have on the engines what their hours are. And I'm not particularly well versed on the Yanmars. I don't know what their hours expectancy is. 600 gallons of fuel, probably more than enough for doing it. I'm not seeing anything that will give us an idea of what the range is, or what I should say the fuel burn is. So let's go ahead and see if we can find something else that might give us that a little better. But there are a lot of boats that it might be a trawler setup, but it's running dual 454 gas motors, where if it was running a diesel, you might be burning 2-3 gallons an hour of fuel. You run 2 454s, I guarantee you, you're not burning 3-4 gallons an hour powering that boat down the river. So you really want to look at your range and your fuel burns, and to take into consideration how much fuel you're going to use to do this trip, because it's going to get really expensive if you don't take that into consideration when you buy your boat. It could be, in my opinion, if it's not a diesel, I'm not interested in it, because you're just not going to get the life of out of the motor. You're not going to get the fuel efficiency you're going to want to get for the trip, and making it, in my opinion, cost effective. This one right here is a main ship trawler, and this is what I'm getting at. It burns 2.65 gallons an hour at 8 knots. So doing a 9.2 miles an hour, you're getting over 3 miles a gallon. You take that in consideration that the Great Loop is 6,000 miles. So, and you figure a little extra on that, but 6,000 miles, and you're getting close to 3 miles a gallon. you're going to be you're going to be burning less than 2,000 gallons or thereabouts. Add in a big buffer for doing any kind of sightseeing in the Great Lakes, Chesapeake Bay, maybe even going into Nashville. You know, whatever you're looking at being able to do that, and let's call it 2,500 gallons of fuel you're going to do on your trip. At $4 a gallon, that's $10,000. Well, if that's at roughly 3 gallons an hour of burn. Let's say you're burning 5, 6, 7 gallons an hour. Do the math. You could easily spend 20, 30,000 plus just on fuel. That would price the trip out of my budget. I wouldn't be comfortable spending that much money for a year of travel around and sightseeing. That's a lot more than I'm wanting to spend on the trip in just my fuel. You know, there's other things I'd rather spend that extra $20,000 on than my fuel. So, like I said, well under my price range, 8 to 12 knots. This is I want to say it's a dual cabin. Yep. Dual berth. Let's see if I can see it real quick. It has a B berth, and I like the engine room. It's looking clean. That's always something I look at on boats I'm interested in, is how well they maintain their engine room. If they maintain the engine room well, chances are the rest of the boat's in good condition. Looks like I've got only a V berth on this particular boat. So if I'm doing the trip solo, no problems. But if I want to have a friend along, that's an issue. Yeah, that's right. These are the 34s. This one, and there's also this one. The biggest difference between the two is the amount of hours on the motor. But they're both single stateroom boats. And this would be ideal. 34 feet, I'd have no problem single handling this. And it'd give me more than enough room, and more than enough room after my trip to live aboard for however long I want to live aboard the boat, and before I move on and do something else with the rest of my semi-retirement. Decide to go and do something else. But this is some things you have to look into. You have to make sure you budget correctly. You're also going to need to research the boat, see what kind of maintenance you might need to do on it, especially if you're running under a tight pocketbook. A lot of people do these trips in stages, and they'll moor their boat up somewhere for majority of the year while they go back home and work for a part of the year. They'll do one winter, they'll work through here and work all of the summer, fall through the next winter, and then they'll take the springtime to do this section and then put the boat up on the hard again, and so on and so forth. But looks like my timer is getting close. Need to keep it under 15 minutes. So there's my views. Please comment, like, subscribe, whatever you would like to do. But I do watch the comments. Any input would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. You have a pleasant day.